All right, everybody. The Celtics crazy week continues. Last night, round one of the NBA draft is complete. The newest Boston Celtic is Hugo Gonzalez from Real Madrid. I got my guy NikNBA here to break it all down for us, as well as, we got to keep talking about this. We ain't done. We got Anthony Simons. We got George Niang. No more KP. No more Jrue. There's a lot to talk about that's gone on with this Boston Celtics team this week. So, we're going to get into it all here on Green with Envy. You guys know the deal. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. As always, this is your boy Will. We're checking in. How you doing? How you living? Greg is on vacation this week. So we got the NBA draft. We've got two major trades. I couldn't dissect this all alone. So I went to a new internet friend here that I wanted to bring on here. We got NikNBA, who is joining me. Nick, thank you for joining me here, man. You're really saving me with some of this draft coverage. Just telling you before we hopped on, both Greg and I have little ones at home, and the draft is just not in our wheelhouse. So I'm really happy to have you on here to talk about last night.
Nah, man, appreciate you, man. It's an honor. And yeah, stuff comes before other stuff. So, I mean, I can't even blame you, bro. But I appreciate you.
Well, let's get into it here, man. And, real quick, I've been a real big fan of the content that you're putting out here. I'm late to the party. Hands up, that's on me. Late to the party here with your material that you've been putting out. But if you guys haven't checked him out, please make sure you do. NikNBA will make sure you get all the credentials where you need to find him for his countdown, breakdown, X's and O's, all of his thoughts around the Celtics. Definitely somebody, if you don't have him in the rotation, you got to make sure you add this guy here. But I know that you have been digging into the draft for quite a bit. And, we had our guy Spoonie from First to the Floor on here giving us a pre-draft breakdown a couple days ago. And, unfortunately, you've had more time than usual to kind of look into the draft with the way the season ended for the Celtics. Yeah. So last night, and there's been a lot going on this week, so we're going to kind of reverse engineer this. We're going to start with the draft, and then we'll get to the trades, and then we'll kind of try to bring it all together. We'll do our best to try to bring it all together, because it's been a lot in 72 hours here of what's happened with the Boston Celtics. But, last night, pick 28, a lot of rumors. Are the Celtics going to trade up? Do they have their eyes on somebody else? There was some Derek White and Jaylen Brown smoke, which I never really bought into. I kind of put that to the side, but maybe they were going to package something. They do have 32 in the draft tonight as well. We're recording this the morning of round two, now a 2-day draft, which I don't know if that's necessarily necessary, but it is what it is. And so pick 32, we'll hit on that towards the end here. But Nick, let's start with the pick that was made. There's a few guys that I think a lot of Celtics fans were looking at, whether it's Fleming or it's Kalkbrenner or Reynaud. I'm not sure how you say his name. He's French. The French guy from Stanford, Reynaud. Thank you. Yeah. There you go. See, this is why I got you on here to correct me for shit like that. And so they end up going with Hugo Gonzalez, who is somebody that Spoonie mentioned on our podcast the last time that we did some draft coverage here as kind of a sneaky guy that has some high potential upside. Let's start here, Nick. Were you surprised by the pick, and how much work had you done on Hugo before the pick happened?
Yeah, I was very surprised by the pick, but I'm not surprised that it happened, because that's how Brad operates. You know what I'm saying? Right. But how much work? Yeah, I got into the draft earlier because we, of course, were in the championship. But how much work had I done on Hugo? Absolutely zero. And done no work on him. So I was hoping that it was a guy that I was familiar. But yeah, man, I've been up a lot. And I got some stuff. So yes, I was surprised. There were guys that I thought that I was more comfortable with, like a Kalkbrenner, a Reynaud. So yeah, there were of course a Fleming. But yeah, there were guys that I were more comfortable with, but I see the vision now. I see some of it now. So
right. So let's get into the actual guy here that was drafted, Hugo Gonzalez. Then we can talk about what was left on the board and what still might be left on the board for later tonight. Maybe we'll speak it into existence who we want to see get picked at 32. But with Hugo Gonzalez, kid's 19 years old. playing for Real Madrid, which I really appreciate. You tweeted out the roster of Real Madrid. He's basically playing on a post-retirement home NBA team in Real Madrid. You got Serge Ibaka, Rudy Fernandez, Sergio Llull. There's a few other NBA guys that I'm missing on there. There's about 6 or 7. Campazzo, exactly. There's about 6-7 different guys that any real NBA fan would look at that roster and go, oh, I know that dude. Like, it would start coming back to you who these guys are from. So he's been playing in a man's league at 19 years old, second best league in the world, as we always hear about. And so let's just go through, Nick, when you started diving into the tape late last night into this morning, what were the strengths that you saw to his game that led you to believe is the reasons why Brad Stevens made this pick?
So I just want to give some context, right? Again, he plays on a very good team, right? And he's 19. He's been in the Real Madrid system since he was 9, right? Mm-hmm. And this team is focused on winning basketball games. Like, of course, if they have a guy that's young, they'll try to up him, but he's buried on the bench. So don't.
It's not a Luka situation because Luka that's the same program Luka was years ago.
That guy is different. He's not Luka. So yeah. So the strengths I have, intensity on the defensive side is incredible. Great timing as a help side shot blocker. He flies out of nowhere sometimes. Like his intensity. He's insane. Cutting, good feel off the ball is incredible. That also helps him with his on offense. He crashes the glass so well, and we see how in past years those corner crashes have been so important. He's a guy that does that so much, and his putbacks attempts, I watched about 3 full games. He had about 2 in every game. So, and even in with the Hughes team, he only averages 11 minutes per night. But he averages 0.8 offensive rebounds. So that is a great rate for a guy that only plays that small amount of time. The hustle and on the offensive side, he's a slasher. His first step is strong and it's quick. We'll get into some of the stuff that he needs to improve on, which is a lot on the offensive side. But I saw a lot of great stuff as a slasher. He gets to the cup. When he gets there, he needs some, you know what I'm saying? But the energy, the motor, the hustle, the off ball, the smarts that he has as a cutter, and the feel is all there. So when I believe this was Brad's post draft
press conference that he did.
He said intangibles like that blows off of the screen instantly. So I get it.
And one of the things that from that I wanted to bring up is, and I wasn't sure until this morning I started looking into it. He's coming right over, right?
For sure.
This is not going to be something where, where it's a draft and stash like we've seen with some of these later second round picks, right? Like he's coming right over to play. He's coming right over to at least make an impact. And whether or not he'll play in summer league, that's up for debate because, like you mentioned, his Spanish season, I believe, is either just wrapped up or is in the process of wrapping up. And so
it wrapped up last night.
Yeah, okay, that's what. Okay, I knew I read that it was soon. Yeah, like literally, you end your season and then you get drafted. That's a hell of a sequence right there for Hugo Gonzalez. So we'll see if we'll get a chance to see him in summer league. But I think a lot of the things that you said also tied into some of the comments that Stevens made in that press conference. Yeah. Like he did talk about the team needing to play with more pace and to play with more. They. Not necessarily, I can't remember if he used the word stagnant, but predictable, right? This is what the team kind of became at certain points. And this is something I brought up on the last podcast where I think a current, let's call him prospect on the Celtics and Baylor Shireman, I think there's a chance for him to get some minutes and maybe inject some randomness to this team. Like he's almost overconfident, which at times may be a fault, but I think the blessing in disguise of a lot of the things that we're seeing this offseason blessing in disguise. It's never a blessing when Jason Tatum goes out, but Tatum being out allows for you to have more room for developmental time. It gives you more room to adjust your roster flexibility and not have to feel like we're also competing for a championship at the same time. And so I think for a guy like Hugo, who knows how much he's going to play, Missoula is not a big fan of playing rookies. So that's going to be interesting to see how that works out. But I think for guys like him and Baylor Shireman, who are comfortable handling the basketball and kind of making decisions, like I do think that's going to be something that's interesting to watch. And it feels like, and tell me if you felt this, Nick, in some of the comments that Brad made in that post-draft press conference, let's call it, it felt like, hey, he was watching the NBA finals and being like, we need a little bit more, I guess, a little bit more taste, a little bit more diversity. Despite all the great players that we have, there needs to be a little bit more diversity. And, I think with Hugo, he's looking at that two-way ability. We'll talk about the weaknesses here in a second. But did you get that feeling from some of Brad's comments on just the general offseason start and as well as why he picked Hugo Gonzalez?
Yeah, man, because if you look at, of course, we have Tatum, we have Brown, we have guys in the starting five who can create. We have Derek White. Like, we have a lot of guys on the bench. The only guy that can create for himself is Pritchard. We have Hauser, who's a shooter. He's not got as, I'm saying, and Hugo, Shireman have the, like, I think Shireman plays slower, but I love Shireman. Like, he can pass the ball, he can shoot. He's confident. And I don't know if it's Hugo or Hugo, because you know what I'm saying, but he's confident. He's confident, and he's random, and he's a hustler. He is insane. So yes, I think that plays a part. And as he develops, I believe that in pick and roll, if you get it to him on the move, he can make a lot of shit happen by driving. His size, he's athletic. So yeah, I do agree with that.
What are some of the things that you watch that he can improve? I know just from reading some of the scouting reports and from the conversation we had with Spoonie, I know the shot is something that is a bit of a work in progress, but even based on some of the clips I've seen, it's not one of those shots where you're super alarmed, right? It feels like the base is there. Maybe there's some tweaks for whatever reason it's not going in at the rate that you think it should, but it feels like there's something to work with. But outside of the shot, what are some other things that you think are some weaknesses that can be improved?
Yeah, of course, the shot, again, it's not broken. It reminds me of Franz before he had to
Dude, sorry to cut you off. That's exactly what I was thinking when I was watching this. And I'm a YouTube warrior out here this morning watching stuff. Like I didn't watch the full tapes, but that was the player that jumped to my mind watching him. Was like, okay, I see shades. Let's not call it Franz, right? But shades of Franz Wagner. So I'm really excited that you went to that name right there.
Yeah. But yeah, he shot 28%, which he only shoots 3 shots per game. And in the 3 games that I saw, a lot of those threes were under 7 seconds on the shot clock. So he's a player that is forced to be a spot up, which is 38% of his time. And he's not a good shooter yet. And then he's also taking shots at the end of the clock. So that's not a great situation. But other than the shot, which you said before, but I still had to get to that.
Yeah.
All right, so screen navigation isn't the greatest, but again, he's a hustler, and overseas it doesn't hurt him that much because he's a hustler. But the athletes in the NBA, it might hurt him a little bit more, of course. But I think he can work on that for sure, so he can even be a better defensive player. Decision making as a driver can improve. He tends to find himself in crowds. So again, he's confident. When he sees it, he goes, right. And he has some passive feel, but of course, that can always improve. But he found himself in crowds and trying to pass out of them. Sometimes which often led to turnovers. he has to finish better around the rim. He has the moves, the acceleration, the quick first step to get there, right? There's a lot of times where he like I think he uses the Euro step really well, but sometimes I think he takes off too far. So he's taking his 2 steps and his last he's going off way too far, and it either gets blocked or it's a tough chance. So I think he needs to get his steps right and like get closer to use his 6'6" frame with a 6'10" wingspan and use his athleticism. His handle can be sharper, of course. Not a super refined guy there, but again, if you get him on the move, that kind of takes away some of the handle part where he can just go straight into the lane. He tends to overcommit as a help defender sometimes, which I thought there were much more positives in this area.
Right.
But again, as a guy that overcommits sometimes, you can see like the hustle shines on these plays. So if he's helping in, he's tagging. If the pass ends up in the corner, like he's haul assing. So it's just
right.
You know what I'm saying? So I definitely see the upside. Of course, we see that he has things that he needs to improve on, but I like him overall.
I mean, a lot of the things that sound as if they are detractors or weaknesses just come with like maturity and playing, right? Like we talked about, he's not playing in one of these lower leagues where he's the star, right? He's the bottom. He was the Baylor Shireman of Real Madrid, right? Like he was getting and that might even be a stretch, right? He might have not even got that much run in certain moments on that team. So a lot of this is going to be, it's definitely part a developmental project. But I think if anything that we've learned about the Celtics organization over the last couple of years is that that's something they can do. Like you look at Luke Cornett, you look at Sam Hauser, you look at Neemias Queta, right? You look at these guys that made meaningful contributions that come from, kind of bouncing back and forth between the G League and the Celtics main roster. And that gives you, a lot of hope for this guy coming in here. And I think he has all of the foundation. It just becomes, what is that actually going to be? And everything the Celtics are doing right now for this year is really with a mindset towards 26, 27 and beyond, right? Like this next year, it is what it is. We'll talk more about that here in a minute. But 26, 27 and beyond, that's really where, the focus is going to be. So it sounds like after doing some work here, you're kind of sold on this pick. Do you think this was the right pick at 28, knowing who's still on the board? And granted, again, just for those that are not listening to us here live on YouTube or before Thursday night's second round, Celtics have a 32nd pick. So there could be somebody that we feel like, hey, they should have drafted at 28. They're still going to have a chance to draft them at 32 potentially. But do you think this was the right pick, or was there somebody else that you wish they secured before leaving it up to a little bit of variability going into Thursday night?
Yeah, I think having the 32nd pick really takes a lot of pressure off of this pick. I came into it like, hey, they have 2 picks that are really close. They could take a swing and a guy that is projected to help right away. I would have liked the right away to happen at 28. Again, I don't know if he'll come in and be that guy, but just from the projections and how I see this player, right pick, I would have probably picked Kalkbrenner or Reyno. I think Kalkbrenner is like the guy that is solidified as a backup big, like already. Yeah, he of course he's not the quickest on his feet, but you talk about a guy at the rim on both ends, can finish, can block shots at a high rate. So there were guys I would have gone, but that was solely because at the time I didn't know anything about Hugo. But yeah, knowing some more about Hugo, I've warmed up to the pick, especially with us having a pick, having the second pick in the second round. So I probably would have picked someone else, but I can see it, and I hope we pick any of those guys with the 32nd pick.
Yeah, I mean, all trust in Brad, right? Like, and Brad hasn't really had to draft too much, in the first round. Like, I saw somebody put out like, "Oh, Brad missed on all the draft." I'm like, anybody outside of the top 20, you can't call a miss. Like, I'm sorry, drafting is near impossible. If you ain't in the top 20, it's really hard to call misses. So I'm definitely not assessing misses on guys at 45 and 50. Like, that's ridiculous.
And then he was on this list already. He hadn't played yet. Like, he had Jordan Washington list and Shyman, like,
yeah, like people need to relax with some of these. Brad can't draft, and there wasn't a ton of that, to be fair. It's just a couple of the tweets that I saw, but I think, you know, with the little bit of, you know, work that I had done from talking with Spoonie, from doing a little bit of YouTube and searching through the mock drafts, there was kind of 3 guys that I really wanted to walk away with. 2 out of the 3. You mentioned the 2 big guys. I wanted to get at least one of them, whether that's Reno or that was going to be Kalkbrenner. Walking away with one of them, which is still a possibility. That was something. So for me, I was like, once they were both on the board, I was like, okay, we might be able to stretch this to 32 and feel pretty good that at least one of them should be there. Yeah. And then the other guy was Rasheer Fleming out of St. Joe's, that I think over the last probably 3-4 days really tucked myself into. Like, okay, he's like 6'8", big 3-and-D type of guy. You know, when we get to talking about Jrue Holiday here, one of the guys that I really had pegged as would have been in Anthony time and certainly was not on my radar, which we can discuss. But one of the guys that was heavily on my radar was like PJ Washington. And I don't know that Rasheer Fleming, that's a good comp for Rasheer Fleming, but 6'8", 6'9", 3-and-D, you know, can kind of fit into that. I feel like for the Celtics, there's been a void behind the Jays as far as having an athletic wing. Yes. Like, you have Sam Howard, but there hasn't been an athletic wing. And so that's where I feel like a guy like Fleming to me was like, oh, this is kind of answering my request for how I think we might be able to solve the Jrue Holiday situation. And so he's still somebody that I think is interesting. But I mean, right now, all 3 of those, at least one of them will be there. At least one of them will be there. Will they make that pick? I don't know. But those were the 3 guys that I had. So I thought for a second, I was like, damn, I just hopped into this draft late, but we might get 2 out. It might play out the way I was hoping. So, you know, let's not spend too much time on this here, but just give me quickly, who do you think the Celtics take at 32? And maybe you'll look like a genius by the time someone listens to this on a Friday or Saturday.
Who do I think? It has to be one of the bigs. It has to be one of the bigs, just because of the uncertainty with Luke and Horford. Of course, we will get into like the trades and stuff and how they have positioned themselves to be able to sign those guys a lot easier than they would have like 2 weeks. Well, not even 2 weeks ago, like 3 days ago.
Right.
So yeah, I think it has to be Kalkbrenner or Reno. Who do I think? Losing KP, Reno is more of that mode because he's an offensive 5. I feel like if they would have already lost Luke, Kalkbrenner would probably be that guy to slide in. But there's a couple like I think you said like we need athleticism. Like besides Tatum and Brown, the most athletic guy on our team is probably Walsh, and he doesn't really play that much. So
and he's underwhelming, to be honest, as far as like his athleticism on the court, anyways.
So we needed athletes. I think Hugo fits that. Rasheer Fleming 100% fits that. You name PJ, he's a better athlete than PJ. Like 6'9", 7'5" wingspan, just flies everywhere. Of course, he has some things like to hash out, but of course, like athleticism is a thing. Now, Kalkbrenner and Reno don't really bring a supreme athletic ability to us, but they do fill a huge need. And I think when you have good players that fill a need, I think it's there. So I would Kalkbrenner or Reno. I'm gonna probably lean Kalkbrenner. I believe he's a safer option. I think we already took our swing with the Hugo. So I'm gonna say Kalkbrenner, Reno. There's also a French guy like named Openda. He's not a 5, but he's like a 4-ish. So I'll go Kalkbrenner, but
okay, yeah, and I think that's probably the way that I would lean as well too. But as we're mentioning that Brad Stevens press conference, I did think it was of note that he specifically called out it was important to try to bring back both Al and Luke. Like, so he did call that out. We'll see. I think that maybe leads into the next part of the conversation where we start talking about, the 2024 team that that, bring out the trumpets and, we're going to give it its final farewell here with some of these moves that, maybe Brad's not done. And, I do have this idea, though. I want to throw this at you, Nick, here. And there's no way to probably legally do this above board. So it's got to be kind of a wink thing. But, you think back to how Oklahoma City built their team. Al Horford was a part of that, right?
Yeah.
And basically, he got a full half season to kind of reset when they shut him and SGA down, because just with the two of them, they were winning too many games. And they were like, hold up. This is not part of the Sam Presti blueprint right now. Like we got one more year of this, and then we're going to go continue to, start our ascent. And now they're NBA champions. And so there's part of me, man, like I love Al Horford. He has, even before he left and then came back, it really surprised me how much I appreciated Al Horford. He became one of my favorite Celtics. He really is one of my all-time. And so, again, this would have to be kind of a wink thing on the side, but maybe we could get a fake Al Horford retirement for a year. Like, because there really isn't a reason to play Al Horford minutes this year. Like, as much as I love Al and just don't want to see him another uniform, there really isn't a good reason to put mileage for him or for the Celtics, for him to waste mileage next season. So what do you think about the idea about a wink retirement for Al Horford? We can take some of that money, shuffle it to Luke. We're continuing to restructure the books, maybe bring him back next year. Like in my delusional world, that's the ideal situation.
I mean, I definitely can't argue with not putting unnecessary miles on Al Horford. He's 38, 39. So in a year without Tatum, in a year where we think Tatum's going to be out.
Likely no Tatum. We'll just say that. Likely no.
Right. Tatum. There's likely no Jason Tatum. I'm sure that Al still wants to play. So hopefully, hopefully he's not playing for someone else next season. But fake retirement might be strong. It might be illegal. But as you said, like a little, I wouldn't mind Al taking it really easy next season. I would not mind that at all. So if it's a fake retirement, if it's a way that we can do that, I wouldn't mind that at all, because Al is somebody that wants to win. He is a winner. He has been since he was in college. So if he's not winning, like, I still think this team has gotten worse, of course. But as far as the players on paper, but like we've gained financial flexibility like so much. But on the court, the team is not the same, right? And if we don't think we can be a contender, you know what I'm saying? I would love for Al to be healthy when Tatum gets back. So however that happens, I can't really pass up on that.
But by any means necessary is kind of where we're at right now. We'll see. We'll have to see how that works out. But with that, let's go back in time to 2 days ago, basically. Maybe it's 3 days ago. I don't know. It's been such a crazy week, And let's talk about the actual moves that were made. And we'll go in chronological order here, and then we'll try to bring it all together, culminating on draft night. But we knew this was coming. We knew that there was salary that was going to have to be shed. And it was, what does that return look like? And I mentioned this at the beginning of the podcast. And this is something that I've really thought about now that all of these moves have come to fruition, that the silver lining to the horrible Jason Tatum injury is that it's a little bit easier to kind of take your medicine when you're not also like, man, we're wasting a year of contending with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Derek White, and whoever else is still here. And it makes this a little bit easier to process. So the first shoe to fall was always going to be Jrue Holiday. And then I think that kind of set the tone for the next move. But let's start with the Jrue Holiday move. Holiday goes out. Anthony Simons, 2 second-round picks come back. I was very adamant that first of all, the Trailblazers and Anthony Simons were nowhere on my radar. Did you have that clocked anywhere on any of your scenarios for the offseason?
I looked at the Trailblazers a couple of times, but it was more of KP than Jrue. I thought they had a lot of guards that they had, like Scoot Henderson, Simons, of course, and Shaedon Sharpe. I didn't think they would need a guard, and I didn't think they would take Jrue back after trading them to us. But I didn't really have the Blazers. I had a trade drawn up for KP, which was Rob and Matisse Thybulle.
Right. That would make a lot more sense to me, to be honest, for
Jrue,
the Blazers anyways.
Yeah, for the Blazers. I was trying to think of the Blazers, but no, I did not have it.
Yeah, so that definitely felt like it came, out of left field. So definitely did not have this clock, but and like I was saying, I was adamant that they were going to have to attach probably a first round pick or some type of sweetener because of that 3 years, $105 million, which I do not understand why the Blazers, like, I understand what they're doing, but that's a lot to take on for a team that's going to be at best in the play-in in the West, and that's like at best scenario. So I don't know, but that's not for us to figure out why they decided
that.
Don't bite the hand
that feeds you, man. Don't bite the hand that feeds.
Yeah. So
shout out to
we'll leave that for a Blazers podcast to kind of dive into. But from a Celtics perspective, Anthony Simons is a much probably higher value player return than what I had imagined.
I was going to ask you that because I had a question like who's more valuable, him or Jrue? Now I know that Anthony Simons is younger, but on a contender team, depending on the contender team, I would probably lean Jrue, right? Because he's a proven 16 game player, right? But Simons brings such an offensive jolt to us with a team that Tatum is out is a very good scoring bet for a season that doesn't have Tatum. So that was pretty hard because Jrue's contract, his age. Simon's younger, but he is on an expiring, which is great for the Celtics. But yeah, I wanted to ask you who do you think is more valuable to the league as a whole?
Well, so I think it's, one of the big things that I always say on this show is context matters, right? So, and I think you kind of nailed it there, is if this is a world in which Jason Tatum is not hurt and you're asking me for a team with championship aspirations, do I want Tatum and Holiday or Tatum and Simons? I want Tatum and Holiday. Like that's going to be my answer for next season. In the world that we currently live in, where Jason Tatum is likely not going to be playing, and I have a roster which you already mentioned earlier on this podcast, like who's creating buckets on this team, right? Who can go get their own buckets? Like Jaylen Brown can do it. Peyton Pritchard's probably second on this team as far as somebody that could create their own shot. Derek White, with his IQ, can pick some certain moments and certainly doesn't look great, but it goes in a lot of times because he's just that good of a player. So he can find ways. And then you're losing KP, which we'll get to. And so in a vacuum for this season, for this context of this Celtics team, Anthony Simons, in my opinion, is actually more valuable than Jrue Holiday. And so because he gives you, like, you're losing obviously the defensive side of the ball, it's no question, you're going to be losing something there, but on the offensive side, Drew's not at a place in his career where he's going to be able to get back to that spot that he was, end of his Pelicans run, prime of his Bucks run, where he's still able to generate 20 points per game, handling the ball more. Like, I just think that part of Jrue Holiday's career is done. And we even saw the shooting off the ball, go down quite significantly last year. And so when you think about this Celtics team that they're going to have to put on the court next year, and if they do bring back Allen Luke, like, you're still looking at a very, very competitive team in a weak ass East, right? Like, that's still a team that's in the mix 3-6, somewhere in that range. And so, Simons is going to give you someone who can create on the ball. He can be a shooter off the ball, someone else that can handle. I've got to look into a little bit more. Like, he averaged 5 assists a game basically the last 2 years. I think 5.5 2 years ago, 4.8 or so last year. I got to look into how legit those were on a bad team. Sometimes those are misleading. I haven't done the full work to know that, but 5 is still a lot. It's not nothing. That he's able to do that, and he is used to having the ball in his hand. So I think for this team next year, Simons is the better value than Jrue Holiday. And then with that expiring contract, that also is the added bonus of this all, which is always kind of the ideal target that I was looking at for a return with Holiday, is how can we shed salary, get somebody who is interesting that essentially you get a free look at to decide, is this somebody that maybe there is something for when Tatum comes back? And if not, worst case scenario, they're off the books and you're not on the hook for anything. And you get exactly that with Simons, who, I mean, to be honest, Brad sounds like he's not done dealing. This is under the assumption Simon stays on this team. But I think he really fits kind of a high value, got somebody that gives you what you need on this team next season without Jason Tatum from an offensive perspective that you were going to be sorely lacking. And it gives you a chance to really evaluate, could he be a fit when Tatum comes back and, what it would cost and all that. And you get a full year evaluation as opposed to having to look at him in a situation that you're unfamiliar with and then make that call.
Yeah, no, I think you did that perfectly. Like every avenue, we have flexibility. So if we go with, he's young. I believe teams still can trade for a guy. So if somehow we trade him before the season, like that's an option. If he plays great, through the trade deadline and we end up signing him, great. Or we trade him, great. If it doesn't happen like we think it will, he just walks. So there's like no risk to this at all. But getting to the player, Simons is a solidified 20-5 guy in this league. Is kind of polar opposite from Jrue. On the offensive side, he's really athletic. He's a damn good shooter and shot creator. And something I saw like without Tatum, right? Tatum averaged the most above the break threes per game last season with about 9.6. Simons is in the 96th percentile with 7.5. So a lot of the stuff from like a 3-point above the break type of thing, Simons can give you a lot of that stuff. And the high pick and roll is such a huge part of our offense. And I think Simons does well in the pick and roll as a scorer, as a passer. Like you said, he averages 5 assists. Not a guy that is making like incredible reads, but he can make that pass pretty easily. So he can explode for like a 10 assist game sometimes. But like in the pick and roll, there was 2 games that the Celtics played against the Blazers. There was one where he dropped 30, and a lot of the times the Blazers they're setting him the screen and saying, "Yep, do whatever you got to do." And he's a guy that can create something out of nothing. So yeah, I really like Simons. On the defensive side of the ball, it's not good, right? It's not good. We're gonna lose stuff with Jrue gone, but we've seen players go from teams not really with a defensive culture, even though the Blazers were one of the best defensive teams to end the season with Simons on the team. Like he's not a great defender at all. He's not even a good defender, but the Blazers were still able to get around that.
Right.
But we've seen guys go from teams that don't have a real defensive culture, and then they become guys that switch teams and that culture, and they need to play great on that side to play. And I'm not even asking him to be great, but this is different. I think a lot of a guy like Sam Hauser, who before he was playing couldn't play defense at all, and then he improved so much that he can actually play now. Even when Andrew Wiggins got traded from the T-Wolves, and he was just a guy that's supposed to be like this explosive scorer who has been he was supposed to be this Michael Jordan type of guy, and he was just lost there with the T-Wolves. Got traded to the Warriors, and the defense picked up significantly. Right, he was playing in a role, and he was a guy that had to play that way. Right now, Simons is not going to be defensively Andrew Wiggins, right? But I believe he has the effort, he has the size and the tools to actually be a solid one, right? He doesn't have to be all defense. He just has to be solid and better than what he was in Portland, right? He's athletic and fit. He has long arms. He's like 6'2", 6'3", so he's not like short, but of course there are gonna be times where like taller players just overpower him. It is what it is. But from an effort standpoint and just being better, I think he can come in here, because if he doesn't play defense, he won't play. So it is what it is.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to break down kind of like Simon's value to this team. And like you said, sometimes the situation changes everything about what it is. And I think a lot of that, we'll see what happens with Luke and Al, because I think that will be a big part of that culture, right? If we don't have them and it's, Nimi and some, vet mins, that's going to be a whole different scenario. So that will be something that we'll have to see what that looks like. But from this move, less than 24 hours later, led directly to the next set of cost cutting. And this is something that, with the Simons and Holiday contract, it's only about $5 million difference. So seeing that, kind of my antenna went up. It's like, all right, whatever happens next, either there's multiple moves coming, or we're gonna really have to just like eat some medicine on this next one. And that's kind of what happened here with the Kristaps Porzingis move, who I really thought, based on how weird his season ended with the mystery illness and what was actually happening, and when he was out there, it was bad, man. It was real bad this postseason. Like, KP is a ceiling raiser. I think when he was healthy, he really took the Celtics to another level. But you kind of look at both postseasons, and other than game one of the finals, where it was almost more of an emotional boost than anything. I mean, he did have a good encore performance, but it was more of an emotional boost. He was kind of nothing these two postseasons that he was here. And so I wasn't really sure how that was going to play out. But Brad, he got assigned a task to get under the second apron. And when you give Brad a task, that man accomplishes that task real quick. And so sends out KP, 3-way deal with the Nets and Hawks. Ultimately, KP goes to Atlanta. George Niang and a second-round pick come back to the Celtics. Terrence Mann and the 22nd pick from last night went to Brooklyn. So, Nick, looking at the Celtics side of this, I didn't even bother doing like an emergency YouTube video for it because it's just a salary dump. Like, that's all it is. And like, we can talk a little bit about George Niang. Not a big fan of Niang, his face, his, him grabbing, Jaylen Brown's knee. I still remember that shit. I know he's a Massachusetts guy. And so some people are like, oh, it's a nice homecoming. I don't like George Niang. We are not a fan of George Niang on this podcast. No. And the way I kind of look at it, to be honest, it could have been George Niang, could have been Vitor Krejci, could have been Simone Fontecchio, could have been anybody that makes a certain salary. It's a salary. The name is completely insignificant to me in this. And so he's a guy that if he stays with the Celtics, he'll probably play because they need bodies to play. And like we said, we don't know what's going to happen with Luke and Al. But ultimately, this is basically just a salary dump, in my opinion. But being able to take that medicine without giving up assets and being able to do it in a year that you're, like I said, you're somewhat protected with Jason Tatum not being there, so you don't have to worry about making sure you get on as much on-court value. I still think this is a win, if not a sexy win, for Brad Stevens.
Yeah, man. I think like what I trade value-wise with Jrue and KP, I always thought that Jrue was, like, of course, more valuable. And I didn't think we would have to attach draft capital to Jrue unless we were getting something crazy. Now, because I knew, even though that Jrue has 2 years left on his contract, has a player option at 37, I believe. I knew that Jrue was still gonna have some teams that would, try to trade for him. KP, this is probably the lowest his value has been since he was with the Mavs, and he got traded to the Wizards for like Spencer Dinwiddie and something else.
It was a rough package. I rember that. I can't remember. I know Spencer Dinwiddie was in there, but
Dinwiddie and Bertans, I believe. So, right. Because but regular season KP, right? Ceiling raiser, he's supposed to be the X factor. He's supposed to be the guy that you can't scheme for because he's 7'3". He's a good shooter. If you have a slow-footed 5, he can drive past him. Like, he can do all this stuff. But just like you said, when it came down to play, in 2 years, he's given us 1 game. And with the illness and stuff, we just didn't know who he was at that point. Like, we got a player who we've literally never seen before. So, it is what it is. And if he was like the KP from the regular season, we probably would have just ended playing like a week ago. So, I always thought that we were going to have to attach something to KP to get either like a salary a cut or a player. And the player, again, really doesn't mean much to me. I was just so impressed that we were able to get under the second apron in just 2 moves, because I thought like Sam Hauser would be a casualty to that, which
I've been saying that for weeks. I've been making the joke like he should put his house on Zillow, like he ain't coming back. Like it just seems like it was too easy of a contract to move, and then you have Shireman there to kind of take his spot. And this is kind of one of the next questions I was going to go to as we head towards the end here is like, do you think they're done making moves? Because we've kind of tried to pick some parts of that Brad Stevens press conference last night, and it sounds like he might not be done, but like what route that takes, we don't know. And that's why we said with the Anthony Simons, and Georges Niang falls into this category as well, where we're kind of talking about, on court, assuming they're on this roster, they might still continue to make moves that way. And so do you think, let's just start with Sam, because we were on the same line of thinking before 2 days ago when Jrue and KP got moved within 24 hours. Is I thought Sam was for sure a goner. Now I'm much less certain of that. Do you think Sam is safe, or do you think there's still a potential that Brad's not done? He could be heading somewhere else by the end of the offseason.
I don't think it's safe, but I think it's less likely now. Like it goes from like 90, like I was like 80% sure that Sam was gone. And
I was so fucking confident, dude. If I could have bet on it, I would have thrown so much cash on it. Like I was dead set that Sam was the guy that was gone for sure.
And it's not that he's a bad player or anything like that. Like Sam is an elite shooter, right? But you think that you can find somebody that can do that for less than 10 M's, right? That's solely it, right? But yeah, I think it's less likely now that we have gotten under the second apron. It still would save us 80 million in tax penalties.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's less likely now, of course. But with Shyman, I don't think Shyman was going to shoot like 40% from three.
Oh, hell no. No, he would have got the minutes. It would have looked differently. But I just think he's ready to take the minutes.
Right. He would have shot like 35%, but the passing and the energy, the hustle, you know what I'm saying? I think he could have fielded correctly. But yeah, I think it's less likely now. I don't think Brad is done. Keith Smith tweeted that there were way more things to come. Like he emphasized the word way. So I've been able to trust Keith for as long as I've been a Celtics fan. Hopefully he don't steer me wrong here, but I don't think Brad is done. What those moves are, whether it's free agency or trades, because the Celtics get a lot of flexibility as far as the trades now. We can put two players in a trade now. We can aggregate contracts. We can use TPEs now. So yeah, I don't think
$22 million TPE from that KP deal right there. And then, like, to your point, like Niang and Simons, you can put them together and you get to 30-something million. And you could send that out, and you can figure out what that looks like now. So a lot more flexibility. And yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see if Brad stays where we're at, or if he continues to try to shed salary. Last thing here, and then I'll let you go here, Nick. I know you've been up all night grinding tape and want to make sure you get a little bit of rest in here. But let's talk about the smoke that was out there with Derek White and Jaylen Brown. I never really bought it. Like this draft, especially with Jaylen Brown, unless you're talking those top 2 picks, none of them made any sense to me. And those teams weren't going to trade the top 2 picks for Jaylen Brown. So that just never made sense. Derek White, you can argue that would have been the getting a top 10 pick for Derek White. That's really hitting the top of his value. And I'm sure there's some other stuff with it. I don't see a world in which Derek White and Jaylen Brown are not on this team next year. Do you have anything, even in the back of your mind, that's like, listen, this would have to be the version of an offer for me to budge at all on either of these two? Do you have anything that you've covered that would at least make you think about moving on from one of those two or both of those guys?
Not a lot, of course, but Houston is a team that was always like linked to Brown or White. Amen Thompson would have to be in the trade, and Amen is damn near untouchable. So it's probably not happening. That
right.
Like,
I think it's a quick combo. It's like, can we talk about Amen and then the rest of the package? No. Okay, cool. We'll talk to you later.
Cool.
Like that's
what's up with Brown? What's up with Amen Thompson? All right, bye. Oh, cool. Whatever. Like I ain't tripping. So it will have to be a player like that for me to trade Brown. And I don't think the Rockets do that. I've seen a couple of okay Derek White stuff, but as far
Rockets fans love Derek White, maybe even more than Jaylen Brown.
Right. Yeah. Team. And for Tatum, right? Everything is about Tatum, right? You trade his best friend in Derek White, and then you trade his guy in Jaylen Brown, who he's been to war with for 7 or 8 years. I don't know. I think it would take an an extreme overpay for Brad to do something like that. It'll have to be a trade to a point where Tatum is like, I understand that. Like,
Yeah,
it
like I
hurts,
got no
but
comeback.
yeah,
If
it
Tatum's
hurts,
got no
but
comeback, then
yeah, it hurts, but goddamn, as a
yeah.
whole. So not many I've seen. So yeah.
Yeah, I just don't see it, man. I'm with you. Like it like you said with Jaylen, unless like a Men Thompson. I was trying to go through in my head the other day, like who are the other young prospects that could really like headline that package. And obviously, like Wemby's out, Cooper Flag's out. Like those guys aren't here. Like Ricochet, I don't. That's not doing it for me. Like what I mean. Like there's a very small list of guys, and then with Derek White, I just think you're going to get to a point where you have one value, they have another value. You're going to keep upping it, and it's just never going to work out. So
Yeah.
I don't think either of those guys get moved. I don't know if Brad's done. We'll have to see. Hell of a week though. We still got one more night to go. Thursday night, as we're recording this, round 2, pick 32. We'll see if any of our predictions come to fruition tonight, and see if Brad Stevens gets one more guy that Celtics can add to their rotation for the upcoming season. Nick, appreciate you jumping on here, man. I've had a really fun time with this conversation. Please let everybody know where they can find your coverage, YouTube, all that stuff.
Yeah, Twitter at __ King Nick, YouTube NikNBA right here. Gonna be doing a lot of Hugo Gonzalez stuff and whoever the Celtics pick at 32 in the coming weeks. Yeah, appreciate you, man. This was fun.
Hell yeah, man. Great to link up, and appreciate everybody for joining us here, whether it was live on YouTube or if you guys are listening to this on Spotify, Apple, or wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Make sure you guys rate, subscribe, review, all of that good stuff. We'll see who the Celtics draft at 32. Greg should be back either this weekend or early next week, so we will have some more follow-up coverage for you guys, and as well as we'll keep our ear to the ground here and see what Brad Stevens got up his sleeve. I'm sure the Celtics are not done yet, so we'll have more coverage for you into the off season. That's going to do it for today, though. Everybody, please go enjoy your weekend, and we will catch you guys next week. Peace.